All right, the small intestine. This is the long tubular organ. They call it the small intestine because its diameter is smaller. So when asked about the small intestine, just know the small intestine is longer. Like its length is very extreme. I want to say it's like 18 to 20 feet, maybe a little bit more. But if you were to like pull out the intestines and like stretch them, there would be quite a bit of small intestine. So they're very long and there's a lot of them, but the tube for them is very small. So, but the small intestine's job, it takes the chyme from the stomach, takes it in, and then it's going to start the process of reabsorption of the nutrients. So it runs from the stomach to the large intestine. So the functions of the small intestine is receive the chyme from the stomach, and then it also receives the pancreatic juice from the pancreas, and then the bile from the liver and the gallbladder. It will continue on with the digestion of anything in the chyme that still needs digested. So any of the food particles that are coming in that haven't been broken down yet. It will start to absorb the digestive products, and then anything that's left over gets sent into the large intestine. There are three major parts of the small intestine that you need to know. The duodenum, which I've already talked about a little bit, but the duodenum is the shortest part right next to the stomach, and this is where the chyme comes in from the stomach. You also have the jejunum, another fun word, and that makes up about 2/5 of the small intestine. So the 2/5 that are kind of the upper portion. It has a slightly larger diameter, but not much, than the ileum, which is the last part. And most of the digestive process that takes place in the small intestine, most of it takes place in the jejunum. And then finally, you have the ileum, which is the most distal portion. It's the furthest, and the ileum will then go into the large intestine. So the jejunum and the ileum, they have a bunch of this. When we do our like rat dissection, when you get to the intestines, you will see this kind of clearish, maybe slight yellowy color to it. Kind of looks a little bit like snot, but it's a little like rougher than snot, but it is called the mesentery. And so the mesentery does several different things. It keeps the small intestines attached to each other so that they don't just like ooze out and like fill up your abdominal cavity. It keeps them attached to the abdominal wall. So it keeps them attached to basically your abdominal region so that, again, they don't splue out everywhere. But the other thing that they do is they provide nutrients and nerves and the lymphatic vessels to the intestinal wall. So the mesentery is responsible for making sure that the intestines uh, they keep their nutrients. Um, Even though the nutrient absorption is starting to occur in the small intestine, once that happens, those nutrients have to be sent to the blood vessels. And then it's the job of the blood vessels to take those nutrients and return them to the small intestine through the mesentery. So they have to have kind of like a middleman. So here's our stomach. The chyme comes through. The duodenum is here. And then from the duodenum, it goes into the jejunum. From the jejunum, if you follow this all the way down, you go into the ileum, and the ileum is the last part before it goes into the large intestine, which is over here. The mesentery, again, it kind of looks like fat, but it's not quite fat. And here is those blood vessels coming in and out, and then also the lymphatic vessels to maintain immunity. The small intestine, it actually does it does both of the types of movements that we've talked about with digestion. They do both segmentation and peristalsis. Segmentation, it is going to, so this is where inside the small intestine, you have these two rings, and they kind of just swoosh back and forth. And as they do that, the chyme will go back and forth. And as it's doing this, it's a very slow process, which means that food stays in the small intestine for a really long time. Also, at the same time that you have the segmentation going back and forth, you have another set of muscles which are causing the peristaltic waves to go. And so the food is going back and forth, but it's also being moved very slowly by the peristaltic waves. So this is why chyme takes 3 to 10 hours to stay in your small intestine and to go through the entire process, because it's basically like one of those 2 steps forward, 1 step back type thing. If a person, if the chyme gets into the small intestine and the chyme is unable to be broken down, there will be this thing that's called a peristaltic rush. And if that happens, so this is usually like you can feel this happen when you really have to use the bathroom, like with diarrhea, and you feel that like bump in your stomach, like you can feel that gurgle. That is the peristaltic rush. And so what that does is it causes the chyme to go too fast, and it doesn't give the chyme a chance for the water that's in it to be reabsorbed back into the small intestines. So it's basically being rushed out before the water can be taken out, and that results in diarrhea. Um, so that's why diarrhea is referred to something, it's a dehydration process, or it's a dehydrate process. Even though that's kind of like, well, it's watery. Like, why do we call that dehydration? It's because your body did not get a chance to absorb that water. So it is leaving the body. All right, last little bit here is the large intestine. Again, it's called the large intestine because the diameter is larger. So if your small intestine is very small, your large intestine is larger. This is only about 6 feet in length. Again, small intestine is, I want to say, like now that I'm thinking about it, I know your intestines as a whole is 36 feet. So the small intestines must be about 26 feet in length. But the large intestine is about 6 feet in length, but the diameter is bigger. So it begins in the lower right portion of the abdominal cavity at something that's called the cecum. So the cecum is where the small intestine and is going to lead into the large intestine. So the large intestine will start at the right portion of the abdominal cavity. It will go up, it will cross, and then it will come back down. Once it comes back down, it will lead to the outside world through the anus. And the large intestine's job is to finish up water and electrolyte absorption and form and store feces. So, a common misconception is that urine is also something that is produced in the digestive system, and it has its own complete set. So by the end of the day, with your digestive system, the only thing that's supposed to move forward is food, and it's mixing. The liquids that you drink take a different route, completely different route. So the only thing food and drink have in common is your stomach, and then after that they start to diverge. So parts of the large intestine, again, you have the cecum. That's kind of like a pouch at the beginning where the ileum from the small intestine empties into the large intestine. You have another sphincter there called the iliac sphincter. The appendix hangs right off of the cecum, and they think that the appendix used to help with digestion aid, but in recent evolution, the appendix is not as important. The colon is the ascending, transverse, descending, and sigmoid regions of the large intestine. So when we'd say like the colon, it's actually a majority of the large intestine is the colon. It's the part that goes up, it's the part that goes across, it's the part that comes back down, and then it kind of crosses back over that sigmoid section. The rectum is a long, straight section, or not long. It's a kind of smaller, straight section of the large intestine. It sits right behind your tailbone, essentially. And then the anal canal, that is where the rectum opens up into this canal, which is that's going to be encompassed by two different types of sphincter muscles. You have an involuntary sphincter muscle. Those are the ones that you cannot control. So when you got to go and you have bypassed the voluntariness of it, and your body is like, we got to get this out of here, that involuntary internal anal sphincter will take over. But you also have the voluntary external anal sphincter. So those are more on the outside. And that is what allows you to choose when you need to use the bathroom. So here is our small intestine. So here's the ileum from the small intestine, or excuse me, here's our large intestine. So here's the ileum from the small intestine. It leads into the cecum, which is here. The appendix is this little dangly guy. And then you have the ascending colon, the transverse colon, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon. So this is the part that cuts back over. And then you have this little bump. You have the anal canal. Oh, sorry, the rectum first. Right? Rectum is really small and right here. The anal canal, and then you have the actual anus. Some fun facts, some poop fun facts. When poop gets to, again, the anus, you have these internal anal sphincters. So these are the ones that are closest to the anal canal. And then you have these external anal sphincters, which are the muscles that are further away. When somebody feels like they have to toot and they end up pooping a little bit, that is because gas in this area, it can trick the sphincters. So if the internal anal sphincters release at all, then it's involuntary and you can't fix that. So when somebody has to toot, it's actually the external anal sphincters that are releasing, and it keeps the internal anal sphincters tight. So you toot, the gas comes out, but the poop stays in because it's larger. Well, sometimes gas can trick, especially if there is poop hanging out right here waiting to come out. So the gas can trick that external anal sphincters to relax. And then as soon as they do that, the poop pushes up against the internal anal sphincters harder, and that causes them to release, which is, and then, yeah. So there's your fun fact. The other fun fact is poop that sits in your anal canal. When you poop that out, that is about the size of your anal canal because your anus can stretch to accommodate for that. So some final things with the large intestine, now that you know way more than you probably wanted to about poop. The large intestine, it's not supposed to digest or absorb any nutrients. It can finish up absorption of water and it can finish up absorption of electrolytes, but the nutrients themselves, those should be absorbed in the small intestine. Anything that does not get absorbed in the small intestine will exit through the anus. Mucus is another really important secretion. It is what allows for your fecal matter, your poop, to basically not get stuck as it goes through. It needs to be covered in that mucus membrane. So the mucus helps it move along. It absorbs out electrolytes and water, but that should be it. The large intestine also contains a lot of bacteria. So it contains your intestinal flora. And the bacteria's job is to synthesize vitamins that we by ourselves cannot do. So we need those bacteria. That is why if you are taking an antibiotic, you also need to take a probiotic with it. The antibiotic will kill any of the bacteria that it comes into contact with. So while you're taking an antibiotic, doctors will typically recommend you take a probiotic, like in the form of yogurt with cultures, and that is to restore your gut bacteria. Those are the bacteria that is responsible for vitamin synthesization. So, and then the bacteria will synthesize those vitamins, and then the vitamins can be reabsorbed later. But again, nutrients themselves from the food do not get reabsorbed or get reabsorbed through the large intestine. The other thing is cellulose. So cellulose will pass through the body as fiber. We ourselves cannot break down cellulose. We ourselves cannot break down fiber. That's again why we need those bacteria to do it. This is also why if you eat like corn, the shell of the corn is made out of cellulose, and the body really can't break that down because it's too hard. So that's why you see it again reappear. All right, so feces themselves, a little bit more poop information. Feces is anything that was undigested. It is about 75% water, so it's not a lot of what was originally food. It also has electrolytes in it. It should have mucus in it, and again, that's to just help it get through. It does have any of the intestinal cells that were shed during the process, so it is full of intestinal cells. And then there's also bacteria, which gives it the stink that poop has. The color of your poop can also determine health of the individual. So typically the brown poop just means that the bile pigments have been broken down. And after they get broken down so much, their color will start to change. But different colors of poop can indicate health. So if somebody has very yellow poop, that might indicate that they have some liver stuff going on, that their bilirubin isn't being broken down properly. If you have different colors in your poop, red poop might indicate that you have an intestinal bleed somewhere. Dark brown poop that looks like dried blood, again, might mean that you have a bleed somewhere. different colors mean that you've eaten different things. But yeah, so your poop can tell a lot about you and what you've eaten and what kind of health you are in. So some problems of the digestive system: gastroenteritis, that is inflammation of the GI tract. So anywhere that is, it's typically most common in the intestines. Appendicitis is inflammation of the appendix. And then, so some people with appendicitis, or if you have appendicitis, they're just going to cut it out because you don't really need it. Metabolism: as you get older, your metabolism will decrease. So it's a joy of getting older. More middle-aged digestive problems: ulcers, which is where the acids of your stomach will burn holes into your stomach. That's why you need those mucus cells to really help keep it from getting burnt. Gallbladder problems: I talked about high cholesterol can make it so that you get gallstones. And then as you get older, just naturally, you have decreased digestive juices. So that means it takes longer to get stuff through your digestive system. On top of that, peristalsis slows down. So these two together, so the decrease in digestive juices and the peristalsis, those together make it so that your metabolism is slowing down because it takes longer to break everything down. That is also why constipation, especially with this peristalsis slowing down, constipation is more common in the elderly. And then finally, as you get older, diverticulosis, oh my gosh, diverticulosis, there we go, and cancer are more common. You are going to use this slide here, the 6 steps of digestion. You will use that to fill out the other, it's a document that's in Classroom. So use this slide to make sure to help you fill out that portion. And there's also some textbook pages that I left as well. But that is it for digestive system, anatomy, and physiology. So as always, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we will do some activities in class to help drive it home. Till then, I'll see you.